Thanks for being here. I'm excited to see these Bitmojis. Go ahead, see and Addy and Rose.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to What's Up with Equity and ABE. So we will be kind of recapping what's going on with the racial equity grant and just kind of giving you a look forward of what's going on. And then we have Rose here who will kind of give us a download on the administrative analysis. So we'll let you know who our presenters are here today. So I'm Moua-Leske, and I'm the program manager for Southwest ABE down in the Marshall area.
And hello, everyone. My name is Addy Wolbaum. I am the assistant on this grant, also located in Marshall, Minnesota.
Hi, everyone. And my name is Rose Chu, and I just realized we have a little spelling error on the company. Things that you don't see until you see it like for the 10th time. So glad to be here. And I have the pleasure to be working with C and Addy on this project.
All right, and today's agenda, we'll be going over the overview of the grant, equity and ABE, previous and current activities, our advisory groups, our team members, our future plans, our focus group, and our administrative serving findings and themes. So just kind of going over the grant, for those of you who don't know what the racial equity grant is, this grant, we are actually finishing up our second year here, and then we have one more year, but it is a 3-year supplemental service grant. And we had a couple goals that we had to make sure that we fulfilled. And the first goal was to complete a racial equity analysis. And that consisted of designing, conducting, and reporting on the analysis of racial equity within the ABE's state system here. And we're using equity lens, racial equity lens, but we are not limited to LGBTQ+, disability, gender, immigration status, socioeconomic status, and so on. And then we're going to be using both qualitative and quantitative of gathering and interpreting the data. And then our goal too is, actually we've been kind of doing this as we've been gathering information, is making recommendations and any actions based on the analysis. So we've been using our advisory groups to help us with that as we're looking at the data. Is, are there any recommendations we can make to the state so that just some simple little change that could make our program more equitable? And then our goal 3 is our advisory group. So we have 2 advisory groups. We have one that is that consists of ABE, anybody who works in ABE, whether it's an administrator, a teacher, a para, or even a partner of ABE. So sometimes we have community services, we have school, we are open into it, but and then the other group is our student advisory group, and this is for any ABE students that are past ABE students or current ABE students. And we have found that that's probably one of the most beneficial groups that Addy and I have had the pleasure of working with, and just hearing from our students, because we don't get to hear from our students very often. So it's been really fun to listen to them and to see what they have to say. And then our 4th goal is professional development coordination. So this is just kind of working with being on the PD committee and kind of giving any recommendations there for any PD that the state could benefit from. And then goal 5 is kind of just a piggyback, or just an extension of that, is make sure that we provide resources with the PD and we have it available for everybody.
So a quick little explanation of why equity matters in ABE. So to start off, equity, it differs from equality, and sometimes people get those mixed up. They think that pursuing equality is doing enough, but really equity is about looking at what groups of people may need a little more support due to historical barriers, or just things that create barriers in people's lives and how they pursue their education. So equity is about fairness, whereas equality is about sameness. And this little image shows that quite well. And Minnesota is kind of a unique state because we're quite well known for our education system. But if you look at our high school achievement gap, students of color are having much lower success rates than what their white students in our education system. So if you think about that, that will roll over and kind of impact ABE. And we see that there are these disparities. So how can ABE start closing those gaps even more? And also Minnesota, it's just a growing state. We have more and more populations joining us who may need different and new resources that we may not have thought of before. So it's all about giving support to those who may need it a little more.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of mention this as a grounding approach. Some of you may have seen this before. This is a way to think about why we do the work we do. We oftentimes think of system change as something outside of kind of like, well, if only the legislators do something, if only the managers do something, if only the district superintendents do something. And we want to think about system change with these 6 conditions. And this is one of the best, I would say, definition of system change, that it is about advancing equity by shifting the conditions that hold a problem in place. So very quickly, there are 6 conditions. The top level conditions are oftentimes what we think, whether it's more money, whether it's policy change, or making sure that there are some practices that everybody should be following. It's all good. Those are necessary, but not sufficient if we do not pay attention to the people involved. We are all part of the system. Systems are made of people. So we got to pay attention to the relationship, to the connections, to whose voice are we hearing and whose voices have we not heard. And the deepest level of change is about how we think about something, whether it is a model or some implicit bias that we have, or a way of thinking or a culture that we've had for a long time that is an examine. So it's a way to really ground why we do the work we do. Next slide. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Rose. Okay, so just an overview of our previous and current year. So year 1, we formed I hired on Addy. We weren't really sure how we were going to hire a DEI assistant and how we were going to get one, but we got really lucky. We found Addy, and she has been my constant and my soundboard, and she's just been amazing working with. So I've been really, really lucky to have her. And she's going to go into the last year with me. So we're going to work on this together. And Rose as well too. So I've been really lucky with the great team I have here. And then we formed our 2 advisory groups. We haven't had a lot of luck with getting advisory members. I think our student one, we have a lot more luck. We actually have a lot more candidates than we do positions, but for our ABE one, we really are looking for more people. So any of you here today, we will share the link for the application, because we are looking at our last year. So if you are interested in being on the advisory group, you get kind of firsthand dibs at looking at all information when we get the reports, and you get to help us make those recommendations to the state and to the regions of what we can do. And then we developed and administered 3 surveys. So this one took a long time. Addy and I now are experts in writing surveys, because Rose has been such a great mentor. We're not experts, but we have gotten really good at writing surveys. So we helped her create the administrator, the educator, the student, and just the student one is not included in DOC. I'll explain that a little bit more. So we were able to administer all those 3. And then year 2, we were able to get, we're working on the DOC, which is right now we're doing. And the reason why we didn't get the DOC students is because we had to pretty much write I would say like a master's paper. Addy did an amazing job on it. I said I already wrote 2. I don't want to write anymore. So Addy got some good practice in writing a master's paper and filling out the application, which was very long and tedious, and we were approved. And so we had worked several months just collecting surveys from the DOC. So thank you so much to the leadership directors at each of these facilities, these sites, so that we were able to collect surveys from students there. This summer, we look for our new advisory group. So some of our advisory members, I would say 50% are kind of repeat from before with our student one, and then our REAP one, which is our ABE one. That one, I would say, I don't know, like 80% is same, Addy would say. And then, so Rose and her team worked on analyzing administrators' survey results, which today she will be sharing the results with you. So really excited. We've kind of heard a little bit here and there, but Addy and I actually haven't heard the complete thing yet. So we're super excited to hear that as well. And that's where we're at. Find my mouse. Okay, so just a really quick background on the surveys is for the administrators, these are kind of the themes that we were looking for in each of the surveys. And so for the administrator, we want to look at identify the success and challenges from being a leader. You know, how are you, from a viewpoint, are you providing your team with the tools they need to make that their program is equitable? So we were really excited with 63 responses, which was fantastic because there's about 39 consortiums in the state of Minnesota. So 63 was fantastic. Educators, we wanted to understand the experiences and success and challenges of being an educator. We received about 123 responses. And then students, we wanted to capture their experience as Minnesota ABE students. And we were ecstatic when we had 453 responses. And then we are working on collecting, well, Addy is working on collecting and counting and editing, or not editing, but inputting all the DOC because they are all paper, because everybody else did theirs through Google form, and the DOC students, because they don't have access to computers, technology, we had to do paper with that. And so Addy has been awesome and taking all the papers and typing them all in and putting them into a Google form, so we have them all. So currently we have about 254, and roughly we have about 400. So we're really excited. So that's about over 800, right? If I'm doing my math right.
So as C had mentioned before, we have 2 advisory groups. This one is our ABE and partners, our current members. This is just a little shout out for applications for next year. I will go ahead and put the application in the chat. For next year, some expectations you can have being part of the group. You'll attend the monthly meetings, and also you'll get to assist in analyzing the student data, which we haven't started at all. You'll also get to assist in organizing the focus group research, coming up with the questions and themes that we want to dig deeper into. And this is the last year. Year 3 will be a big year, so making those final recommendations and action items, and then doing the final reports of the grant. So it'll be all wrapped up this next year. I just threw in the chat the application link, so if you're interested in being a part of it for next year, you can go ahead and apply. All right, and then this is our adult learner advisory group. So with our students, oh yes, as C said, there is a stipend. It's $35 per meeting. So this is our student group. We have various consortia represented from various parts of the state, and we also do have 4 individuals that represent the Department of Corrections in their education systems. We feel like that was very important for us to have on this year, especially since we were doing the DOC research this year. And we will be looking for more students to join us with next year's advisory group. They can plan on joining meetings monthly, also just giving us some more insight about their experiences and helping us go through the data again and coming up with those final recommendations from a student standpoint. And there's also a stipend for this. So if you know of any students that might be a good fit or interested in this, you can send that application their way.
Yeah, and just make sure you clarify to them that it is not a class, because our first year we had tons of candidates, and Addy and I were just ecstatic. We found out they thought it was a class and they were getting paid to take a class. So just make sure you make it clear to your students that this is an advisory group about putting their input in. It's not a class. All right, so our team members moving forward for year 3 is we decided to keep Rose on because I guess she's doing a good job, so we'll keep her on. No, she's amazing. So she's going to do the written report portion of the educator the student and the focus group results. And then Kaya Bergen, which many of you know, she will be doing the infographics. So that way we can push those out and those can be easily dispersed in your programs. So even your students will be able to look at it and see results of all the surveys. And then our future plans. So like I said, Rose and Kai will be working on the educator survey, and we will be sharing those at Summer Institute. In the fall, we will be analyzing the student surveys. And then in the winter, we will conduct our focus groups. So we will have one that will be up in the metro area and one that will be on Zoom. So that way we can get students who are in the DOC. So if you kind of have some students in mind that you think would be great for a focus group, let us know. We'd love to get recommendations. And then we will we'll be getting our findings from the focus group, and we will be presenting all the final things at spring regional conferences. And maybe that will be a in-person one, I'm not sure yet. So, and then making any final recommendations. Obviously, we're still making recommendations as we go, but we will be making any final recommendations and action steps by then.
So as C stated, we will be having a focus group this coming winter. We realize that data can only tell us so much. And when there's limited response options, it doesn't really capture the full experience of the students. So once we analyze our data, we're going to figure out which themes and questions we want to dig deeper into and get more of the stories behind them. And yeah, like she said, there'll be one in-person one in the metro area for those students, and then another one to capture our rural and our incarcerated students to make sure we're being fair to everybody. So just keep an eye out for emails that will be coming around the fall, and let us know if you have any students that would be a good fit for this and would want to share their experiences.
So is this me now? So in the remaining time, I'm going to try to go really quickly because I know we want to make sure we end on time. And you will get this a slide deck, so you can study a little bit more deeply some of the data. So just so that you know, we have these categories of data that we collected for the administrators. From A to G, and I actually counted, it's about 40 questions. Most of them are quantitative questions that you kind of select choices, and then we definitely make there are many places for additional comments, additional feedback, additional more narrative way of explaining a response. Next slide. And this is the part that I'm going to go very quickly. What we've done is to kind of show you a few of the quantitative results. And one of them that is interesting is that theme has come up again and again about how ABE educators are not paid the same as K-12 educators. Okay. And then another one that was kind of huge is that more than half of the respondents talk about how they don't actually collect additional data beside what is mandated. So there's some opportunity to think about, and actually some of the narrative talk, there's a sense that people do want to collect, but they don't quite know how. So there's a lot of unevenness in terms of what sites are doing to have more additional data that could help us support our students better. Next slide. And another one is same kind of thing. There is some unevenness in terms of sites, because some are very small, some are bigger consortium, where there may or may not be a process to collect and update what is going on with their staff, like what demographic data could we be collecting so that we can understand who our staff really are. And then it's interesting that this has come up quite a bit. If you look at the bottom bar graph there, when we asked the question, what are the challenges in filling a position? The biggest one, because if you think about other means there were many other reasons like retirement or whatever that might be, but the one that is definitively have the most kind of response were about how there were not enough licensed staff available, and the diversity of licensed staff available have been mentioned again and again. Next slide. And in this last slide that we'll talk about more in our qualitative data is that we asked a question around kind of how our administrators are feeling in terms of how they are supported, whether they feel like there is a plan that they have in the site, and then whether that they feel like there are enough opportunities. Overall, from a quantitative standpoint, if there seems like people think that there is a plan. And I will tell you that previewing the qualitative data, I'm very clear after working with my team around the qualitative data that I think people are thinking of, oh yeah, every one of our staff have a plan. So when we think about that question, it was more answered from an individual standpoint that, yep, all my staff have it. They all can kind of choose opportunities as they come. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next section. Keep going. Thank you. So, so this is where we're going to present about the qualitative data. And at this point of the qualitative data, we don't have focus groups yet, but we were able to really look at all the narrative responses and feedback of all the sections in the survey. And it was very interesting as to what came about. And just so that you know, I work with a team of 2 other people where there is a very rigorous qualitative data analysis process. And I think it's going to show in the next slide, please. Yep. So basically, we got all the data, and there is a process called data interaction. And what that means is that all 3 of us looked at the data from folder to folder. We collected a lot of data, and we kind of looked for what are things that are coming up, and we make comments. So we are interacting with the data individually, and then we came together to discuss it. And the reason you want more than 1 person looking at the data is because there are inherent biases. Because if I were to only look at it, I might miss something that my colleague John might be looking and might be seeing something that I didn't see. So the idea of data interaction is a very important part of the qualitative data analysis. And then we started coding. We started thinking of like, wow, there's a whole chunk of the comments that we make and the interaction that we are observing that are related to staff. And then there are some that are related to systems. And it was through that process that we come to some discovery of themes. And if you look at those squiggly lines that we have, is to really show that it's iterative. Even as I was preparing these slides for this presentation, what we did, I was already like having another iteration of thinking about those themes. So and so what we're showing you is what we got right now. It might still evolve as we kind of look at recommendation, look at what is next. So it's a very iterative process. Next slide. So why are we doing that? It is a meaning-making process. So because there are 3 of us who did it, as much as there are inherent biases because of who we are coming to the data, the fact that we are making meaning of the data, and the fact that we're going to bring those biases to bear. So some questions that my colleagues, Michael and John might have, it's good to reveal that together so that we can talk about it. Okay, and then we can really think about what are the implications? What is it that we are wanting? What are some common things that we could share in terms of how we talk about those emergent themes? So it's a really rigorous process, and I'm going through this very quickly. Usually I can present this probably like the whole section, but it's an important thing to think about, that when we did the analysis, there was a very rigorous process to look at the data. Next slide. So here are the 3 themes, okay? And we kind of consolidated into 3 major themes with some sort of sub-themes that go with it. First is the culture of ABE. And under this theme, it was clear that there were practices and norms there are some rules that are visible, some of them are invisible, that has to do with how people work together or not work together, and whether they are in alignment. The way people think about equity, the way people think about PD, the way people think about how they work with the district. And the second bullet is a big one for us. There was a lot of talk about talent management, and a lot of time, the way we talk about ABE is always in comparison to K-12. Not good or bad. This is all unearthing, right? What is being shown in terms of how people talk about it. And it sounds like there are apparent inequities. And then the final way is just what I mentioned, the idea of culture, of whether are we talking about the culture of ABE locally? Are we talking about the culture as we interact with the state? Or are we talking about the culture in terms of our relationship to the district, right? So all that cultural aspect of ABE impact how we get the results that we want, how do we move forward to advance equity. And so the 2 quotes that are here really kind of illustrate. There are many quotes, but these are the 2 that we pull out. One says, overall, the lower pay of ABE teachers due to the limited funding makes it very difficult to compete with K-12 for the few licensed BIPOC teachers available. Okay. Again, there were other quotes, but this kind of captured the essence of that. This culture that there's an identity of ABE always in comparison to K-12. And then the next one says something about, we do ask our students in class about what they need, right? Whether in student conferences, during their planning meetings. And this question has to do with what data we are collecting. And yet this person say, we do not have a structured way to collect this data. So it's kind of up to individuals to do it. So again, what is the culture? And this was very uneven. Some cultures seem to have or some AB site have a culture of collecting data where everybody is doing it. And then the other side is like, well, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It kind of depends. So there's a cultural issue here that, not an issue, but a theme that is pervasive in the data. Next slide, please. The next one is interesting. We call it under the idea of a theme of community, of sense of belonging. And what we were able to glean from the data was that there was a lot of talk around whether we are doing things together as a ABE community versus individual choices and individual struggle, individual challenges. So the idea of collective versus individual came up a lot in the data. And again, it is also that relationship to the site, the sense that do we have a voice because we are under a district, or because we are under, or because we are small, because we are fiscal agent is somebody else. What is the sense of agency do we have or not have? Okay, around what we can say, who makes decisions, And so that relationship and that sense of voice and agency was very much the idea that yet we could also hear people wanting to belong to something. So the quote, it's a very telling quote. I don't feel like our school district understands or wants to understand what ABE does or what our needs are. And that disconnect came up again and again. And we could almost feel the pain of wanting to belong and not feeling like they belong. And another one is that we do not all share the same support from our host districts, right? There's again a lot of unevenness. Some host districts do a great job connecting and including ABE. Some, again, it's not a judgment. It's what is unnerving, right? That there is ABE and then there's the rest of the district. So there's some unevenness about that, I mean, by unearthing these themes, we can work on it. The last one, please. The last one is, right now sometimes we don't quite know how to theme them, but I would call it approach to solutions. Again, there is a lot of talk of, oh, we have professional development plan. Everybody have their own plan. They're going to choose whatever is available. There are lots of opportunities available, or the fact that there are lots of ways that the state is telling us what to do, or we are doing cultural competence training. So that is a plan. So the idea that sometimes when we think of plans, there definitely is the idea of, are we talking about plan at the local level? Are we talking at the state level? Are we talking at the federal level? That was all a little bit unclear. And so what system change means. And the second one is also one that is, these are already related. It's already related. The idea that there are changes that are technical. Is it like number of offering, making the offering more visible, making sure that there's a website to show all of it. Adaptive means that we got to think about, we may not even know what the answers are. Have we actually talked about it in a way that has a little bit more bigger picture? So the idea of whether you're on the dance floor or you are on the balcony watching the dance floor. And we can do a whole like professional development and understanding, what do leaders do when you get too technical versus when you have a chance where you need to look at it from a more from a balcony perspective, from a more 20,000 feet perspective. And then the last one has to do with those practices, the infrastructure. Are we talking about ABE locally solving everything? Or are there things that we could actually think of it more at the state level? It really relates to the culture, right? How do we think about ABE? Do we think of it locally only, or are we thinking of it as what the state is telling us what to do, and then what is the federal department telling us what to do? What do we want as ABE administrators, as ABE staff, as ABE teachers and educators? What do we want? What is our own infrastructure? Is the infrastructure towards something that we want, or is it the infrastructure is there because we have to do something, because it's a mandate, right? So how we approach those solutions make a difference. So this is a very telling quote. Despite the demographics of our student populations, it seems that not much attention is paid to equity issues in ABE leadership, decision-making across the state or within consortiums, because some consortiums are big. Most of the limited focus is on students we serve, and in some cases, in terms of human resources within organizations or school districts. And I'm trying to remember where this was the context of, but the idea that the way we were interpreting this quote is that it is important to focus on the students, absolutely. But how do we support the students? what is leadership doing? Leaderships matter, right? Are we all kind of making our own decisions at our own local level? Are there ways that we could maybe move as a state? Okay. And the idea is that there were actually some quote that talk about how, oh, we are doing equity work because HR is doing it. So are we thinking of equity from a legal perspective, or are we thinking of equity in ways that maybe we could have a shared understanding? Okay. So this quote really speaks to how are we approaching the solutions to advancing equity. If you remember the definition, right, is about advancing equity by shifting the conditions at the policy level, at the practice level, at the funding, resource, information level, system change or changing those conditions at the relationship level, how we relate to each other, who is making decisions, who are we asking for feedback, and then what is that culture aspect that give us a certain way and view of ABE that is maybe an examine, and maybe we need to go deeper into that. Okay, I'm sort of getting a little bit ahead in terms of recommendations, but as we get more information, as we do more data analysis, as we look at even focus group data, that we're going to put all this together and think about, so what about this data, right? What do we do with this data? Next slide. So I feel like I'm going through this really quickly, but that's okay. We'll, all of this is kind of a taste of all more to come. So I wanted to show you a kind of a framework that has been around for a long time. Some of you might have heard of this, but it really speaks to the opportunity in ABE to think more expansively about our work. Go ahead, Addy. Hopefully everybody can hear it. So it's a very quick video that shows that, if you think about the individual rollers of each of the boats, you could think of them as each of the ABE sites. And what does it mean to really visualize how we could roll together towards something bigger than all of us individually? So that's kind of the collective impact framework. It is work that has been around for a while, but it's become very important to think about how just because you are locally controlled doesn't mean that you couldn't still do collective impact work. So it's a both end. You could do individual work that is very important and also be part of something bigger. Okay. Next slide. And I'm gonna okay, we're gonna do this real quick. Oh, yes. We'll get to the next slide here. There you go. So this slide is just a great slide visually to think about how it's almost like the system can be very big, and it's like the elephant. Each of us have our own role in supporting, in this case, the elephant. But like, if you think about this visual, is to say that if I was to only look at one part of the elephant, it might look like it is a wall here, it is a rope, it is a tree, it is a snake, it is a fan, and not be able to see that if we were to really like collaborate, we are collaborating around something called, this animal called an elephant. So the idea of we need to be collaborative, and I think ABE is very collaborative culture, but how do we do it systematically, right? How do we do it and think systematically? So that's all I got for this. So stay tuned because we got lots of great things coming in this next year.
Thank you so much, Rose. All right, just a quick plug before we send you off is that Lynx is doing a DEI course cohort, and the kickoff is May 4th. And we will put the link into the chat for you. This is a 6-week course, about 6 hours. So we'll do the kickoff. You'll have 5 weeks of independent work, and then we will have the wrap up on June 15th. And there is 8 CEUs with it and $150 stipend. So if you are interested, Addy has plugged it in there. Thank you, Addy. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. If you have any questions, we have a minute or two here.
Thank you so much. We'll hang out for a couple moments just to see if there are any questions. I'm going to put the flyer in the chat, and coffee breaks begin at 1:15. Bring your own coffee.
And maybe just a plug for the coffee break, right? We will dig a little bit deeper into the 3 themes that were shared here very quickly. And you'll get a chance to hopefully have a chance to interact and make meaning of those 3 themes. We have some questions for you. So it will be a great coffee break session.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording.